Hey, what's up, y'all? It's Matt from More Music Sessions. Today in this video, we're going to go over how to play the Iron Man riff from Black Sabbath. All right. So, to play this riff, we're going to just keep it real simple. Just stick to the single notes that he gets into with the riff. Eventually, I'll make another video, maybe talking about more of the power chords that he actually gets into. But we're gonna keep it real basic. So this riff, a lot of times I'll start just early beginners on. We'll talk about how we can read tabs going forward and recap on some of the fundamentals to get you started. Okay, so to get a heavy metal tone that Tony Iommi went with Iron Man, he was famous for using a Dallas Arbiter Rangemaster treble booster. Okay, and we won't go into like too specifics of matching his precise sound, but what I have is to get kind of just like a hard edge, like a metal sound, I'm using a distortion pedal and a fuzz pedal. So I have a little rat and a fuzz face to get more of a just kind of in your face sound, where we're getting this kind of rat. Turn it up just there. Another thing you can do is go for like a large hall reverb sound to get kind of just that big open space sound, right? Right. So that's what we're gonna be going with this tone today, and obviously he was famous for using an SG, but I'm working with my Squire Telly for this video. So we'll match the tone as much as we can. And in making this video, Ozzy passed just recently here too. So this is a bit of a tribute to the Prince of Darkness. Rest in peace. But let's get right into it here. So I'll attach a tab that you can follow along with, some guitar sheet music, and a tab to go along with this riff. And like I mentioned, it's just going to be the basic single notes that we're going to be working with the riff. So if you're looking at the tab too, if you're looking at the top of the music, you notice how on the first note there's a 3 that's written on the first note. So the numbers that are written at the top are telling you which fingers we're going to be using. Okay, so if you're not familiar with the way that we number our fingers in guitar, our index finger is our first finger, all right, and then middle finger is second, ring is third, and fourth finger is going to be your pinky, all right. With the arrangement that I wrote out, we're going to be going with your third finger on our first note, all right. And if you weren't sure as well, the way that we tell where we are on the neck of the guitar is all based off of where the index finger is, your first finger. So if my first finger, for instance, is on the 9th fret, where we count the frets like this again here too, the frets are our blocks on the neck of the guitar. This would be your 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th. So if my first finger is here, this would be considered 9th position. Right? But where we're starting with the Iron Man riff, we're going to be beginning in 5th position, because our third finger is going to be starting on the 7th fret. So yeah, third finger is going to be the first note where we play. Okay? So, and if you're not familiar with how we read tabs yet, you notice on the sheet that I attached on this video, on below the actual rhythms in the notes, it says tab. okay? And in other videos, we'll talk more about how we read actual sheet music where the finger numbers are labeled at the top with the rhythms and the notes. But this video, we'll just specifically talk about tabs. So the way that we read tabs is, yeah, you see where it says tab, each one of the lines that are written are telling you a string on the guitar. Okay, so the bottom line that has the 7 as the first note is your 6th string. All right, and if you weren't sure as well yet, the way that we number our strings is like this. We got 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so we're gonna start with the 7th fret on your 6th string. Alright, that'll be our first note that we go with. So yeah, the first line again is your 6th string. The next line is the 5th. And then we got 4, 3, 2, 1. The first string, your high E, is the top line where the tab is written, okay? And then the numbers that they write on the lines are telling you which frets you're playing. So the 7 that we start with is the 7th fret of the 6th string, okay? So how about I play the riff and then we'll talk more about what's going on with the riff. So it's gonna sound something like this. We got... So you notice where my fingers were going. So there's going to be a hand position switch that happens with this riff here as well, the way that I wrote it out. And the reason that I'm writing it out for you guys like this as well too is because eventually when you play the power chords, you're going to have the same motion with your hands. So power chords, which we won't go too in depth with, look something like this. We got... kind of a tone, yeah, with the amount of notes that you're playing. So gonna be pretty similar, but yeah, a little bit of different kinds of positions where you're starting with certain things. Again, with the main riff that I just played, we start in 5th position. Right, your first finger's on this 5th fret, right? So we got 7, 5, 5, 7, 7, right? Now, on this arrangement too, we'll talk more in depth with this kind of a technique with guitar going forward here too. But I wrote P's on the top of the music where the finger numbers are. P's are another way of telling you that you're going to be doing a pull-off, okay? And the way the pull-offs work are going to be like this. You're going to be plucking a note, and then you're going to be pulling off your finger, right? Yeah, and a lot of times when you write guitar music, you might even have a curved line that goes into the note as well. So those are a couple different ways that you can notate pull-offs. And the opposite, or a similar effect that's in the opposite direction is a hammer-on. So a hammer-on, which we'll get into even the next part of the riff we can talk about here too for this video, is where you pluck a note and then you hammer on your finger up to get to another tone. Right? You see how I'm hammering, I'm putting my finger down while not plucking it. Okay? To label that, you label it the same way where you have a curved line going into the note for the sheet music as well. But these first ones, they give you some pull-offs. You can try it to start, but don't worry about it too much in the beginning. I prefer you, when you're first starting this riff, to just pluck all the notes, okay? But you've got some pull-offs that happen over here, right? So let's talk about where we move up in there as well. We start in 5th position. Alright, and then we're gonna slide up to 9th position to get this part. Alright, the 10-9, 10-9, 10-9, you're gonna be playing 3 times. And what to help you get into the habit of getting familiar with doing pull-offs is you want to get comfortable with anchoring your first finger down, okay? Because you notice how my first finger is pressed down the whole time I'm putting my second finger down, so going. Alright, so when you practice at home, try just plucking, keeping your first finger down. A common thing that people will do when they first start out is they play tiptoe with their fingers, basically going, right? But that's not necessary. What you want to get in the habit of to create good technique is, to anchor your first finger down. Remember to keep your thumb on the neck of the guitar too. Keep it flat, like you're pinching up against the neck of the guitar. If I took away the neck, you want to use your thumb and your index finger like kind of in between, like your index and middle finger, to support your hand, right? Never bring your palm up to the neck of the guitar. Never and avoid rolling your thumb up too much over the neck of the guitar. We'll get into other situations where you might need to use your thumb, but a majority of what you play, you want to have your thumb where it's not raised over the neck. You're keeping it flat. You're pinching up against the first finger and your middle finger. All right. So we start in 5th position and we move up to 9th position. Okay. So let's play the first riff again, and then we'll talk about the second riff before we gotta start wrapping this video up. So here it is again, 5th position. So 5th position, slide up to 9th position, and then we're back to 5th position. Let me show you again. We got 5th position, 9th position, back to 5th position. If you want to get fancy with it for extra credit, which Iommi does, is he does a slide, which we'll get into more too in depth. With slides, you want to keep the pressure of your finger down to get this sound, right? If I'm just doing this without putting my finger down, keeping pressure, you get this kind of a sound, right? But after the riff, right, you get more of a rock kind of a trademark kind of a sound energy that goes with the riff. Okay, so that's riff 1. This song is chock full of riffs, but we'll just focus on the first 2 riffs for this video. Okay, so the second riff happens on the second line of measures. And if you're not familiar with the term measure, a measure is how we separate each pattern. A measure, or another name for a measure, is a bar. We separate with a bar line. So at the beginning, the first set of notes, we have the first bar or the first measure. When you cross over to the next set of notes after the bar line that goes vertical, that would be considered the second measure or the second bar. So the whole first 4 measures would be the first line of measures. And if you're playing the actual song too, you notice how I wrote a 6x at the end of the first line. So that 6x is telling you to repeat the third and the fourth measure of the first line, okay? And the way that you know that it's a repeat is you notice how there's a thick line and a thin line at the very end of the first line of the measures. But there's also 2 dots that are in between the tab and then also the sheet music. Okay, so yeah, the dots on the tab are basically in between. Let's see, the 6-5-4. It's in between the third line, or the string for the tab. All right, and for the lines of the actual music, there's a couple of different terms we use for lines. Lines of measures, or lines of the staff, or the lines of the tab. So the staff, that word we use when we're reading sheet music for where the finger numbers are. But the two dots that happen on the staff happen between the third line of the staff, okay? So that tells you that that's a repeat sign in music. So that's a repeat sign, and then where the dots happen with the thin and the thick line, the beginning of the third measure is where it's telling you to repeat to, okay? But let's go ahead and move on though. So yeah, you're gonna be playing those two measures 6 times. The first 2 measures just play through once. And if you listen to the song, you'll see how that lines up with the song. But the next riff happens on measure 5. There's even a 5 written at the beginning of the second line of measures. So yeah, it shows you that we're on the 5th measure here too, if you're not quite sure. So these 2 measures on the second line are gonna repeat. We're only gonna repeat it once. So if they don't give you amount of times X, you can assume that it's only gonna happen twice. For the second riff that happens on measure 5, we're gonna start on 5th position. So let me go ahead and play it to you, and we'll talk about it some more. So we got. So you notice how I had a little bit of separation at the very end there. If you're looking at the last measure of the second line, and if you're looking at the sheet music of that line, you notice how there's symbols at the ends of the notes. So those are rest symbols we'll get more into going forward here too. But the first rest symbol is what we would consider an 8th note rest, which gets half of a beat. And the other symbol is a half note rest, which gets 2 full counts, okay? But you can basically think of just counting 2 after you play the 5-5-5. We're gonna go rest, rest. So it's gonna work like that. You listen to more of the song, you can hear how that lines up as well. With the beginning of this riff, you notice how we started in 5th position, right? We went 7-7-5, 7-6-5-5-5. We'll start there, but when we get into the 4th fret, right after that open string, you're gonna move down to 4th position, and then right when you get back into the 5s, we're gonna move back up into 5th position. So we got 7-7-5, 7-6-5-5-5, 0-4-5-5-6-7-7, right? 5-7-6-5-5-5, 0-4-5-5-5. Back to the main riff after that. The third line of notes that we've got, we're back into riff 1 again. Okay. And yeah, riff 2, you see how I wrote an H on measure 2. That's telling you, again, that you can hammer on to the 4th fret, right? I didn't label the curve lines for the hammer-ons and the pull-offs for this one. Each one of the hammer-ons and pull-offs we run into with either P's or H's that we've got. But again, don't worry too much about the hammer-ons and pull-offs yet. you can start incorporating those in more as you get comfortable with the actual notes, with plucking with those. But get started with these first two riffs for Iron Man, and we'll talk about some of the other riffs that we get into with this song going forward. But have fun with this one. If you got any questions or you want to comment, feel free to send me a message. Hit that subscribe button, give us a like, and send me a message if you'd like to set up lessons going forward. But take care, and I'll catch you guys next time.